I like to come to this monument and photograph it up close, the crack between parts of the pediment where plants grow in gaps in the stone. Photographed so close, they confuse the viewer's sense of scale. Could be vines in a jungle ravine. I file shots like this in my portfolio under the name Life Finds a Way. Perhaps pretentious. The monument commemorates the man who introduced the bill which became the 1832 Reform Act, one of the first pieces of electoral reform legislation passed by the British Parliament. I'm pretty sure that the text on the monument has been changed at some point. For one thing, the letters look much more golden now. For another, I'm pretty sure the original text thanked the man, rather bootlickingly, for having instituted a century of civic peace with his reforms. This at least spoke to the fears which animated his attempts at reform at least as much as any pangs of conscience. Read the new text, and you could be forgiven for thinking he did it out of the goodness of his no doubt oaken heart. Britain is good at this, of course. Beatify the man, retell the story, leave out the names and lives of those who struggled. Wilberforce, Churchill, Rhodes, even Attlee. This is why it's important to study history, to realize on what fragile foundations our civic peace rests. The men who like to make a lot of noise about betrayal are threatening to push that peace today, at least in London. I had expected to see some of their local equivalents at the monument, but if they're here, they're keeping quiet. One man waved to a friend in what might have been a cold Roman salute, but it was his left hand I glimpsed. Still, mounted police pass by. Perhaps the authorities share my suspicions. Not that that puts us on the same side. Get those animals off those poor horses, I mutter. A line from Jarman's diaries, from back when civic peace was being enforced on the backs of queer people. A time too many of my countrymen would welcome back again for me to ever feel as safe in this city as some. People sit on the steps of the monument, waiting for dates, catching rays, taking 5, listening to the young black man in a cap and puffer jacket, singing what I guess is modern soul. I'm well into folkydom at this stage, thinking of rooting through the vinyl at Windows or Reflex when I've finished this coffee from Pret, jonesing for some Herbie Hancock or the Sons of Kemet record if they have it, but the boy is giving these glitzy, overproduced tracks he sings along to a good bit of bollocks. You can tell he feels some much more deeply than others, that he's living them, and not just reproducing lyrics. On the line, we have become warriors, my love. He shares a glance with the big issue vendor working the square. I've encountered her before. She's a terrier for making a sale, has mastered saying "have a nice day" in a way which makes you feel a piece of shit if you refuse her. Many do, pleading a lack of cash or just plain playing ignorant. An old bearded white guy with a cane stops for a chat, but still leaves empty-handed. Another old geezer in a cap and photographer's waistcoat greets her warmly, buys a magazine and offers her a sweet. An Asian lad in a bandana approaches the singer, smartphone recording, holding out a note which he drops in the busker's bag. A few others now spring forward, proffer coins. Decades ago, starting out in the writing life, I wrote a somewhat florid story celebrating the act of putting money in an opera singer's hat on Northumberland Street. I later wrote an even more pretentious piece of poetry containing the lines, "The hand that helps a sister on the sidewalk is the hand of God in motion," when I was briefly in love with a barmaid who helped out a street kid in St. Mark's Place, New York City. And yeah, it's a wanky way of putting it, for sure, but that impulse to reciprocity is probably our best hope of living one day in real civic peace, when the statues of liars and chancers have fallen, and we look at history through lenses no longer fogged by self-serving sentimentality.